book is such a steaming pile of that when I read it, I felt like I got food poisoning. I questioned her in underlining. I don't know what the hell was that book? Did she say we left at my son's big? Welcome to the first episode of Talking Bitter Baking Sweet, where I, former owner of at-home bakery Celine's Treats and current owner of your hearts, gives all of her bitter literary opinions while baking you something fun and sweet and easy to make. So the first topic on today's schedule is books I hate. See, I thought it would be a really fun type of juxtaposition for me to rage about books that I absolutely despise and made me feel all type of hateful emotions while baking you something that has such soft connotations in my life because it's something my grandma has been making me since I was a child. So while we discuss books I hate, I'm going to be making you a Lebanese dessert called sfouf, which is a sweet turmeric-based cake. You can't really taste the turmeric, but it's just there to give it yellow color, to give it a specific texture. It's going to be really, really lovely. So let's go. Okay, the hair is tied, the hands are washed, the oven is currently preheating at 190 degrees centigrade, which I think is around 410 degrees Fahrenheit, but I just like to have it on preheating while I make everything because it's a really quick and easy mixture to make. I'm gonna put like the ingredients on the side and you're gonna guess the instructions just essentially based off what I'm doing. I also have realized I am way too tall to be standing while doing this, so I'm just gonna go get a chair and then we're gonna start talking about all the books I hate. Okay, first book on the list is November 9 by Colleen Hoover. Of fucking course, it's a Colleen Hoover book that is first on my list of books I hate. I have tried to give that insane woman so many chances literarily, and every single time she's disappointed me, which has now just led me to, when I do read her book, just sort of hate read them, because that book is such a steaming pile of piss that when I read it, I felt like I got food poisoning. I don't know how best to explain it, but if I was born on November 9th, I would have taken my own life, because what on earth is that book even about? Like, genuinely, the plot twist, albeit was shocking, was just such a mess. It was such a joke. I was truly horrified and surprised by it. It was Joe Goldberg tries his hand at arson, except he's really bad at what he does. And mind you, it wasn't even like a crime of passion. It was more like, I'm committing arson because I feel like you're to blame for like the suffering that I'm currently feeling. And then mind you, cool, you committed this crime, right? You did this illegality that you went through. But on top of that, you then proceeded to date the singular person who was impacted by what you did, the singular person who was completely mauled and mutilated and just disfigured by what it is that you did. And besides that point, you did that, and then you dated this person, and then you proceeded to gaslight this bitch into believing that her insecurities and the way that she felt was just purely a projection, and like her insecurity was unattractive and she wasn't secure within herself and she needed to truly grow into herself.
I'm calling the police. Hello? Yes.
You are perhaps the most psychotic book character in a non-fantasy book I have ever encountered in my life, and I mean this wholeheartedly. I hated everything about this book, truly. I don't know how best to put it into words. Then I really hated it. I hated every single second of it. Also, on top of that, I think it's some of the worst Colleen Hoover writing I've ever read, besides the other Colleen Hoover book that I'm gonna bring up in this list. But the writing was truly outrageous, and also the main character, the guy, I've already forgotten his name. He's supposed to be like this struggling author and struggling poet, and like every half or every chapter started with like some of his poems, and when I tell you they are some of the worst poetry I've ever read. Now I know literature is subjective, particularly poetry is subjective, and you can't tell someone what is and is not good poetry, but this was fucking terrible poetry, and I hate myself for even reading it. There come few times in life where you truly realize that literature is a prison and your ability to read is a prison, because I really regret ever learning how to read when I read this book. There was this one bit where it was his poetry opening a chapter, and it was like, I loved her in bold, she hated me in italics, I questioned her in underlining. I don't know what the fuck. Also, mind you, let me talk about something else I despised about this book before I move on. His brother dies, and he proceeds to date his brother's widow and raise his nephew slash niece as his own child, and then manages to gaslight the main character into thinking she was being like over dramatic for the way that she reacted when she found this out. Are we doing well as a society? That's my question. Daughter of the Pirate King, if anyone has spent any time on TikTok literally whatsoever in the last 3 years, you will have seen this book be recommended as like the best, like, oh my god, like female Pirates of the Caribbean, like female Jack Sparrow. If that is the female Jack Sparrow, then I think they mean the Johnny Depp, because that's not Jack Sparrow, honey. Like, there are so many things that I could say that I hate about this book. I'm gonna comment on the character herself. She's supposed to be the female Jack Sparrow, right? She's supposed to be witty and intelligent and faster than everyone else and this and that and the other. What? The entire thing about her character is just that, like, she's so witty and she's smarter than everyone, and her internal monologue is consistently, I could take all of them if I wanted to, I could kill everybody in this room if I really wanted to, and then like literally losing a fight within 5 seconds. It's humiliating. Like, she gets caught and she gets put in handcuffs, and then her inner monologue is like, I could get out of these handcuffs if I really wanted to, it would take me a few seconds to break these handcuffs and then kill everybody in my vicinity. And then like the reality is like she goes like this, and then she's like still stuck in the fucking handcuffs. It's just ridiculous. Next on the list, you guessed it, Colleen Hoover. Once again, this is now reminders of him. What the fuck was that book? What the hell was that book? This book was outrageous. I'm supposed to feel sorry for a woman whose entire purpose, the entire life goal of her throughout this story is to prove herself as a fit enough mother and guardian to regain custody of her child, and then just simply proceeds to do absolutely everything within her power to prove that she's actually not fit to be a guardian or a mother, and I'm supposed to feel sorry for her. You lied about who you were, you lied about your name, and then you continue to begin an emotional, physical, and sexual relationship with your dead boyfriend, father of your child's ex-best friend. Are you well? Are you mentally okay? I'm supposed to feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for myself for having read this. And don't get me started, because genuinely the writing style for this book was absolutely outrageous. It read, and I mean this in the worst way possible, because I truly believe that Wattpad has been the backbone of so much within literary society. Like, truly, it got a lot of people into reading. Some very incredibly talented authors have been based on Wattpad, but this book read like Wattpad in the way that like a 12-year-old writing the worst possible story you've ever read in your life would read like Wattpad. It was so terribly written. I think I caught about 1 million grammatical mistakes while I was reading it because it was such a mess. It was punctuated wrong, but it was very much like, I feel like this, I go here. What the fuck is going on, girl? If you were looking for a book with complex characters, three-dimensional characters, a truly riveting plot where you really don't know what is going to happen next and who to root for and where the story is going to go, I would absolutely recommend you any book except this one. I would recommend this book perhaps to someone I really didn't like. I would recommend this book to someone I didn't believe had any capacity whatsoever for truly enjoying reading. And I'm sorry, like, this is not to come for Colleen Hoover fans. Like, you can like what you want to like. I'm just giving you, this is my review on this book, and I think it was absolutely horrendous. On top of all of that, there was something in this book that was truly like the clearest embodiment of why authors need to stay out of reader spaces and no longer get involved in reader conversations. Because you know this whole thing of when readers, we're in our communities and we have discussions about what we want to see in books and what we want to see in literature, and then the authors are very clearly immersed within this community and they make it obvious that they're in this community. She has this line in her book, and I am certain that this line was only thrown in there because she has seen the multitude of criticism that she has received for never ever having any real characters of color, any type of diversity in her books besides them just being like random side characters. So she definitely threw this line in there for the sake of appeasing the people that were criticizing the books. And the quote was something along the lines of, she was praising the dead ex-boyfriend's best friend who she was dating, who didn't know it was her. She was praising him for being a good man because he was a bartender, he owned a bar or whatever, and she said, I loved how diverse his bar was. And then she named like 2 characters who were Hispanic and 1 who was black. And then literally, I don't think mentioned them ever again, maybe once or twice more in the entire book. And we're supposed to be like, oh my god, thank you so much, you are the savior of literature, why didn't you get a Nobel Peace Prize? Next on the list is Cinderella is Dead. Now my issue with this book actually has nothing to do with plots or characters. If anything, it appealed most to me because of the potential of this plot and this characters. Like, the pitch of the story was fantastic. Cinderella is dead, except it's not like Cinderella going to the ball, and except it's not straight, and also it's a black female character, a black lesbian female character. That had the potential to be one of the greatest like young adult fantasy books I had read at the time, and I was so unbelievably disappointed by it. And again, not because of the plot, because the plot, like, at the end of the day, I could see the potential, I could see where she wanted to go with it. It was the writing style. I was truly so disappointed because it felt like I was reading a first draft. It truly felt like the first draft of a story that you would write in a creative writing class, where you know you've got this cool idea, it's an awesome idea and you love it, but you're like you're in a creative writing class and you've never done a creative writing class before, and it's like an improv class and it's just the first draft and you never go back to it again. That's how it read to me. And I feel like if I have to pick up a pen and correct grammatical, syntactical errors within a text, I don't want to be reading it. If I have to feel like a teacher redlining what is printed and has gone through editors, through professional publishing, it is clearly not a good book. I think there were sentences, or maybe it was just my print, maybe it was just the print that I had, but there were errors in this book that were literally like, instead of saying I went into the woods, it would be like I the woods into went. Are we literate? Are we literate? So that was really disappointing for me. That's the one that makes me less angry and more sad, because I expected a lot from that book. I expected it to do a lot for the like young adult queer fantasy literary sphere, and it just fell flat. Next is The Charisma Myth. I can't remember who wrote it, and honestly, good, because I would never recommend this book to anyone in the world whatsoever. Reading this book felt exactly like what it would feel like to have a man mansplaining your full-time job to you. Like, it felt exactly like that. It's supposed to be a man teaching you how to be charismatic, teaching you how to have charm, which, I'm gonna be real, not to stroke my own ego or anything, I don't feel like I needed to read this book. I'm a very charismatic person just because of who my mother is and who my father are, and just because of what they gave me. But I read this book just to see, like, maybe this is what I'm doing, or maybe this is what I'm missing, etc. I was like, it sounded like an interesting premise. A lot of men were talking about this book. And that will be the last time I take advice from a wide conglomerate of men, because all of you lied to me, and now I have beef with every single one of you. That was such a terrible book. Look how yellow it is. See that? How beautiful and yellow it is? So essentially, the premise of this cake is it's basically a semolina and turmeric based cake. There's no eggs in it whatsoever. So if you're allergic to eggs, or you can't have eggs, or FODMAP, etc., you can have this cake. Literally, the only liquids that go into it are milk and oil, and it is such a delicious cake, and it has such a tender crumb. You're gonna see once it's baked, it's so good! Now, you can butter your pan or grease it however you like, butter, spray, whatever, but the traditional way to do this, and the way anyone in the village and any one of your Arab grandmothers will tell you to do it, is with tahini. So you spread tahini onto the pan, because first of all, the tahini flavor works really well with the cake, but also tahini is a fantastic non-stick substance that doesn't really cost that much money, because Arabs always have tahini in their house. So you take the tahini, make sure your hands are clean, and you just spread it around the tray. Anyway, next book, you guessed it, Colleen Hoover, Ugly Love. When I tell you, I have never in my life felt more tempted to call the police than I have while I was reading this book. I truly felt like I was victim to a crime. This book was everything that I believe is wrong with life. And you know what's worse is that while you're reading the book and while you're immersed in it, you don't actually realize just how bad it is, and you kind of enjoy reading it until you take a step away. Like, I read the entire book in I think 5 or 6 hours, so I didn't even realize how fucking messed up what I was reading was until I actually put the book down and finished it, and I was like, hold on a second. Did she say we left at my son's big balls?
Wait a damn minute.
Did she really say that? So it was a really interesting experience for me to go through all of that. It also did enrage me, because what do you mean, what, 20, 30 years after your affair with your stepsister, you're still saying your stepsister's name while having sex with someone else? Are we well? My biggest issue with this book is the same reason I hate most Colleen Hoover books, if not all Colleen Hoover books, and it is the fact that it makes excuses and justifies the abuse that men project onto other women just because they went through something traumatic when they were like 35 years ago, when they were 13 years old. I'm so sorry, be a normal human being and go to therapy. It is not this person's fault. It is not your girlfriend's fault that you went through this thing that you did when you were a child. And I feel like the thing that Colleen Hoover does most in her books, she will have these men abuse the hell out of these women and then justify it because someone broke their heart at 14. Go to therapy, bitch. Like, it's just, it will never work for me. Like, you emotionally and psychologically abused this woman because your stepsister broke your heart when you were a kid. And yeah, what you went through was traumatic with their baby and with what happened, but that's why therapy exists. That's why therapists exist. It is not your place and your role to then just be absolutely awful to the people in your life because you went through something traumatic. It is up to you to find a way to resolve this trauma on your own. Okay, it goes in the oven for 35 to 40 minutes, depending on how deep it is, how big your pan is, etc. I don't remember the measurements of my pan, but I'll write them on the screen. Normally at like the 36, 37 minute mark, I do just check it by poking like a big skewer through the deepest part of the cake just to see how wet it is. It's not supposed to come out completely dry, but it's not supposed to come out wet. Okay, that's all the books I can think of right now. I'm sure a lot more that I hate will plop to mind, but stick around anyway so that you can see what the cake we made together looks like and you can watch me eat it. Bye. I forgot to film the cake when it came out, but we've got it here. So let's have a look, shall we? Oh, I wish that you could smell this. If you just look at the beautiful, vibrant color. So obviously it's yellow and it's bright like that because it's got the turmeric in it, but the beautiful thing with turmeric is when it's mixed with the sugar and flour and oil and etc, it doesn't taste like what you would expect a turmeric based tea to taste like. So it works really well. And do you remember I was telling you there's no egg and it's like a semolina based cake essentially, so it has a really tender crumb. I'm gonna show you what I mean by that. Okay, let me just get a piece out. Look at what that crumb looks like. I'm not sure if it's in focus. Like, look at how soft that crumb is. Like look at how both dense and also soft and moist that crumb is. It's delicious. I did actually wait to be filming for the taste test. I just forgot to film, so I forgot to taste, but let us have a taste test, shall we? I will say, I have a sweet tooth, but not that much of a sweet tooth, so the sugar amount in this is perfect. If you have a sweet tooth, especially with cakes, I would add more sugar to the recipe that I placed on the screen, but this would go so good with a cup of tea. Oh my god, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a cup of tea. Thank you for coming to Talking Bitter Baking Sweet. I'll see you for the next episode in this series. Bye!